If money ever arrives in your life all at once, the first thing I want you to understand is that the danger is not where most people think it is. It is not the stock market first. It is not taxes first. It is not even inflation first. The first danger is exposure. Money shows people who you are, but even more than that, it shows you who everyone around you has always been. A lot of people like to fantasize about becoming rich overnight. They imagine one investment taking off, one business idea suddenly catching fire, one inheritance arriving, one lucky break dropping more money into their lap than they ever expected to manage. They imagine relief. They imagine applause. They imagine finally being able to breathe. What they do not imagine is the speed at which their life becomes crowded. The moment people suspect you have money, the atmosphere changes. Curiosity increases. Advice appears out of nowhere. Invitations multiply. Business ideas show up. Emergencies suddenly find their way to your phone. Everybody has a reason. Everybody has a need. Everybody has a story. And most people who get rich quickly are completely unprepared for the social side of wealth because they have never had to defend it before. That is why if money comes fast, I would tell no one unless I absolutely had to. I do not mean living in fear. I do not mean acting ashamed. I mean understanding that privacy is one of the first assets you must protect. Wealth that stays quiet usually lasts longer than wealth that arrives with a speech. There is something I have learned about money over many decades. People like saying money changes people. Most of the time, money does something more revealing than that. It removes the excuses. It exposes character. The jealous person becomes openly resentful. The irresponsible person becomes dependent. The manipulative person becomes creative. The boundaryless person becomes aggressive. Wealth does not invent these traits. It simply gives them a target. So if I woke up tomorrow with far more money than I expected, the only person I would feel an urgent need to call is a serious attorney, not a casual one. Not the family friend who dabbles in paperwork, but someone who understands trusts, privacy, estate planning, asset protection, and how to build legal distance between me and the fortune that just appeared. That conversation matters because once the money is public, you are reacting. Before it is public, you are structuring. And structure is what keeps emotion from running your life. Most people destroy a windfall because they confuse money with permission. Permission to talk more, permission to buy faster, permission to finally prove something, permission to settle old scores, permission to become a new person overnight. That is how you blow up a life that could have become stable for decades. I have no interest in loud wealth. Loud wealth attracts spectators, opportunists, and pressure. Quiet wealth buys time, and time is far more useful than attention. Now let me say something else that people get wrong. When money arrives, a lot of commentators tell you not to quit your job no matter what. I think that is too simplistic. If your work is miserable, if it is draining the life out of you, if you are showing up every day simply because you are trapped, then yes, I would leave that job. I would not feel guilty about it for 1 second, but I would not quit usefulness. There is a big difference between leaving the wrong work and leaving structure altogether. A rich person with no structure and no purpose is in a dangerous position. When the calendar opens up and nothing meaningful fills it, your mind starts drifting toward consumption. Spending becomes entertainment. Boredom starts dressing itself up as freedom. People start buying businesses they do not understand, projects they do not need, toys they stop caring about 3 weeks later, homes they do not even enjoy living in. Money and boredom are a bad mix. So I would quit the wrong job and move toward better work, maybe lighter work, maybe more meaningful work, maybe work where the hours are mine. But I would still want a reason to wake up that is not simply spending money for at least 6 months. I would try to keep my visible life as normal as possible. Same routines, same basic rhythm, same restraint, because sudden money lands in your account immediately, but wisdom takes longer to arrive. If you let your spending run ahead of your thinking, the money will train you into a life you cannot sustain wisely. Then I would do something far less glamorous than most people expect. I would clean up every high-interest leak in my life. The worst debt goes first. Credit cards are not bills. At those rates, they are infestations. Personal loans with ugly terms, expensive car debt, consumer balances that bleed you month after month, all of that should be wiped out. Paying off bad debt is one of the cleanest returns you will ever earn because there is no speculation involved. If a credit card is charging you 24%, paying it off is the same as locking in a 24% risk. Free return. You do not get many opportunities like that. Cheaper debt deserves more thought. A low fixed mortgage is not the same thing as a reckless consumer balance. A low-rate mortgage may actually be useful if your money can earn more elsewhere with acceptable risk. A lot of people pay off every debt instinctively because it feels morally clean. Sometimes that is wise, sometimes it is expensive symbolism. The point is to kill the debt that is clearly stupid first, and then evaluate the rest with a cool head. This is where the reset needs to happen. When a person gets rich suddenly, they often keep the same habits that made their financial life messy when they had much less money. The amounts get bigger, but the thinking stays small. That is fatal. A sloppy person with $100,000 can recover. A sloppy person with several million can make permanent mistakes in a single year. Then comes the part people hate hearing. Do not become the emergency fund for your family and friends. That sounds cold until you have lived long enough to see what borrowed money does to relationships. Lending money to people you love usually creates a terrible blend of guilt, shame, resentment, expectation, and control. The borrower often stops feeling gratitude and starts feeling pressure. The lender stops feeling generous and starts keeping score. Everyone tells themselves it will stay clean. It rarely does. If I truly wanted to help someone close to me and I believed they genuinely needed it, I would rather make a one-time gift than a loan, and I would do it with a very clear rule in my own mind. I am helping once. I am not becoming a recurring rescue package. I am not training another adult to build their life around my balance sheet, because once people learn they can come back, they usually do. And when they do, they are often less careful with their own choices because somewhere in the back of their mind they believe you will absorb the consequences again. That is not kindness. That is financial sedation. Sometimes the most generous boundary is a hard one. Now we arrive at the principle that separates people who visit wealth from people who keep it. Never spend the principle casually, learn to live from the output. Most people still think like consumers when money arrives. They see a large number and start mentally slicing it into purchases. A house, a car school fees, a boat, a trip, a renovation, a watch, a second home. They do not understand that the principle is not just money. It is productive capacity. It is future income waiting to be organized. Every time you spend a chunk of principal on something that does not keep producing, you are not just buying an object. You are destroying the stream that chunk could have generated for years. I like to think of capital as a tree. If the tree is healthy, it keeps producing fruit. If you panic and cut the trunk down because you want a quick fire, you feel warm for one night and poor for a very long time. That is why I always think in terms of what level of income the capital can support rather than how large the lump sum looks at first glance. Start with the life you actually want, not the fantasy version, the real one. What does it cost to live in a way that gives you calm, margin, freedom, a little pleasure, and enough room to be generous without becoming foolish? Once you know that annual number, you can start thinking about your freedom figure. A simple rule of thumb is to multiply the annual life you want by 25. If you want $200,000 a year, then you need something around $5 million working for you. If you are going to try living off a roughly 4% withdrawal framework, you can debate whether 4% is too high, too low. Too simplistic and intelligent people do debate it. That is fine. The exact number is not the point. The point is the mindset. Stop asking, what can I buy right now, and start asking, what can this fortune safely produce year after year without me living in fear? Once you do that, your relationship with money changes. You stop admiring principal for its size and start respecting it for its earning power. If I had to build a serious income engine from a large windfall, I would not chase one magical answer. I would build layers. Each layer would have a different job. The first layer would be stability, treasury exposure, or very short duration government paper has a place there. It is not exciting and it is not designed to make you look clever at dinner. It is there because stability has economic value. If some portion of the capital can sit in instruments tied to the United States government and throw off predictable income with relatively low drama, that becomes useful ballast. It is not the growth engine. It is the shock absorber. The second layer would be broad dividend, producing equity exposure. Not because I worship dividends for their own sake, but because mature cash generating businesses that share profits can be a helpful part of an income machine. The important thing is not to chase yield blindly. A high yield attached to a weak asset is just a trap with prettier marketing. I would rather own a strong basket of disciplined businesses than one flashy payout that collapses the moment conditions turn. Broad dividend funds can do some of that work more safely than trying to guess the one perfect company. If a business inside the fund weakens badly, the fund can replace it. That matters because income that survives is more useful than yield that looked good on a website for 6 months. The third layer would be real estate, not because real estate is magical. It is not. It is work. It is management. It is friction. But real property can do several things at once when bought properly. It can produce current cash flow. It can appreciate over time. It gives you a hard asset, something tangible, something the financial world cannot erase with one bad line of code. And in the tax code, real estate often receives treatment so favorable that people who do not understand it assume it must be unfair. The catch is that real estate rewards competence, not fantasy if you want to own rental property. You need to know your numbers: cold taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, vacancy, financing costs, all of it. You do not buy because a YouTuber told you property always goes up. You buy because the cash flow works, the margin of safety is there, and the asset can still make sense when something goes wrong. The fourth layer is business ownership. This is where the returns can become extraordinary and where the headaches can become equally extraordinary. There is a huge difference between being paid by a company and owning the company. Employees get salaries, owners get the profits after expenses. That distinction changes everything. But I would never romanticize business ownership to someone who thinks it sounds passive by default. A small business is often the opposite of passive. It demands judgment, energy, and staying power. If you buy or build the wrong business without the willingness to understand it, you are not buying freedom. You are buying a second job with worse hours. Still, if you have the skill, the temperament, or the right operators in place, equity in a healthy business can be one of the finest assets in the world because it lets you participate in profits rather than wages. The fifth layer is private credit or peer-to-peer lending, and here I would be especially cautious. Lending directly can produce attractive yields, especially when borrowers are paying up for speed or flexibility. But higher yields are never gifts. They are signals. Somebody is paying you more because the risk is higher, the situation is less liquid, or the lender of first resort would not touch it on easy terms. If I ever played in that world, I would want collateral, structure, and documentation. I would want to understand exactly what happens if the borrower does not pay. Hope is not a credit strategy. The broad point is this: different assets can work together. Some preserve, some grow, some throw off income, some hedge inflation, some give you upside. But the whole purpose is not to own impressive things. It is to build a machine that can buy back your time without forcing you to become a servant to your own fortune. And yes, if a person came into a truly life-changing amount of money, I would carve out some portion of it for enjoyment. I am not interested in martyrdom. A fortune that buys no joy is not wisdom. It is just sterile accounting. But the enjoyment must come after the structure, not before it. The people who stay rich usually understand something simple. Real wealth is not about proving you can buy anything. It is about reaching the point where you no longer have to do things you hate just to keep your life intact. That is freedom. Freedom is waking up and deciding what deserves your attention. Freedom is not negotiating with a boss you cannot stand. Freedom is not pretending to like clients you would never spend 10 minutes with voluntarily. Freedom is not staying trapped in a life that looked successful from the outside but never felt right from the inside. When people blow up sudden wealth, they usually chase possessions. The people who keep wealth learn to buy back time. So if money ever arrives fast in your life, get quiet first, protect your privacy, fix the leaks, refuse to become everyone else. As solution, keep your life structured, build income before identity. And remember this above all else: principle is not there to impress people. It is there to produce a life that no longer depends on panic, noise, or permission. If you understand that, then sudden wealth does not have to ruin you. It can finally free you.